Okay, here we are again. A nice discussion with the reigning, defending, undisputed hydro weight champion, and from what I just learned, terpene champion of the world, Harley Smith.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, I love growing high terpene plants. Health, I call it
Absolutely.
healthy stress.
Love it. Love it. And so we'll just kick it off really quick here. We had a viewer ask us a question of how biologicals, microbials, and biostimulants actually work in a sterile hydroponic system, because a lot of people want to keep their hydroponics sterile. So really, number one, is there a benefit? And we've tapped into this source many times. Number two,
Mhm.
what is the benefit, and how does that work in a sterile system? And so that might be a good way just to start this conversation.
Okay, well, we'll start with some of the trials that I did with biostimulants early on. Were in hydroponic systems without soil, just like ebb and flow systems, or even NFT systems, where they're just bare roots and flowing in nutrient solution. And there was a significant improvement when I added the organic biostimulants, the amino acids, the kelp, some of the other biostimulants that you and I are very familiar with. And I did do tests of leaf analysis in that, and every nutrient built up to higher levels in the tissue than the control. That was just standard hydroponic nutrient without the biostimulants. So the biostimulants, the way I see it, is it improves the uptake of the nutrients, whether it's in soil or in hydroponics. It has an effect on the root cells themselves and on the cellular membranes to stimulate nutrient uptake, especially, as you know, calcium is king, especially calcium. And if the plant takes up more calcium, stronger vascular system, it's going to take up water and distribute water and nutrients throughout the plants. So the nutrients accumulate. The Brix goes up. Also with the biostimulants at the root zone, like the kelp and the humic acid, you get more lateral root growth and more root mass. And that means there's more surface area for the plants to take up water and minerals. Put the two together, better uptake of nutrients, better distribution of nutrients, more chemical reactions, higher Brix. And that's without the effect of the microorganisms. That's a direct effect for chelation and stimulation of the root cells themselves. So
Okay, so
yes, even,
there you go.
yeah, even
Every
without microbes, it does have, quote unquote sterile hydroponic system. I will say this one thing though, before you look at your point on there, but there's really no such thing as a sterile hydroponic system. There are minerals, or there are microbes in the water. There are a lot of microbes that grow on the root zone. Not so much in the water itself, but the ones that will colonize the roots and feed on exudates. So it's really not sterile, as we think. Even if you had biofilters from the Netherlands, where they just are cleaning the water from a recirculating system, getting rid of the wastes that are produced by the plant to clean it. They don't add microbes. They add the biostimulants, speeds up the metabolism of the microorganisms that are already there. They clean the water.
okay.
So, nature, we're not growing in a vacuum. There's a lot of synergy going on all the time, even if we really go into extreme measures to keep it clean.
Okay, and I like you brought up the point that every time you would test them, it seemed to stimulate the plant more nutrient uptake, and yeah, we see that all the time. Now let's take that a step further. Have you done any testing with the additions of certain microbials or certain inoculations or fungi in strictly hydroponic environment? What have you seen in that environment?
Uh, I I looked at I've done it even with commercial growers, but mainly the main benefit's going to be in soil. for microbial inoculants, I believe. Although there is a benefit of early on with your clones pre-treating those to so they colonize the roots because they'll help protect the roots as the plants grow. And remember, the microorganisms in the root zone are the biostimulant factories. They're actually making growth hormones. They're making chelating agents to improve the uptake of nutrients. They're making antimicrobial agents to fight diseases. They're stimulating the immune system. So we can help protect our plants and give them a good head start, even in hydroponics from the beginning with an inoculation. But then as the roots grow, the microbes grow with them. And since we don't have organic fertilizers to break down, the only thing they're going to feed on are the root exudates. So I don't really see the need of inoculating over and over again. Just at transplant, early on, every time you transplant, and maybe one time along the way, kind of as a boost, especially if there's kind of stressful situations. But yeah, I'll say this too. So my early tests on biohydroponics, where I combined the hydroponics with the biostimulants, with not adding microbes, some of the growers that had the best results were the soil growers. And I thought, why is that? I mean, I did all my trials in hydroponics and I saw the results, I measured them. I mean, it was statistically significant improvement. So why are they getting better results in soil? The microbes that you just talked about. The biostimulates stimulate the metabolism of root cells, but they also stimulate the metabolism of the microorganisms. And as the metabolism improves, they're feeding on the exudates, the carbon, they start to vibrate with energy, higher metabolism, and then they start to divide, pop, pop, pop. And as the microbes are actively dividing, that's when they make the biostimulants that improve the uptake of nutrients. So there was more going on with the soil than there was directly with the hydroponics, although there were still measurable, significant results from biostimulants alone in the
Right,
hydro.
right. And here's kind of what I've seen working with our customers. And remember, I've been a customer service rep, a formulator, things like that. So I'm not as scientific as you when it comes to the tests and studies. But what I found is that inoculation and hydro systems, you do get a little bit more root colonization. And by colonization, a lot of times you can't see that, but sometimes you can. And sometimes it can be kind of a tannish to a light brownish color. And a lot of people really freak out when they see that on their roots because they believe, just a white bone colored root, that's healthy. That's what I want to see. However, some of these strains of inoculation we do kind of put a little color onto the root zone. And I used to take calls all the time saying, I'm using your grow and bloom all in ones, and my roots have a tint color to them, a slightly tan or brownish tint to them. And I said, oh, fantastic. That's some of the microbial species that we put in the grow and bloom packs. And they said, well, it's not healthy. I want white roots. And I'd have to say, now just trust me on this. Is your root plump and your plants are still doing great? Oh, yeah, they are. Okay, well, watch that for a week or two and see if they're still plump and the plants are doing great. Well, of course, they are. And so, what that is, you're getting more colonization that you can actually visually see in the plant. And as long as it's not choking that root zone out, the roots aren't shrieking or they're not rotting, those are all beneficials. And so don't be alarmed if you don't have a crystal clear white root. Be alarmed if it's very, very black, very, very dark or sludge like. But a little tint color to them, boy, we've had great results. And it's kind of hard to explain that to people if they haven't experienced that themselves. But it's true. I've seen it over and over and over.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's the pythium and the rhizoctonia, the root rots that cause the problem because as the root hairs start dying back, then they're not taking up nutrients, and you get
Mhm.
symptoms of nutrient deficiencies. But if you have an inoculant on the roots that are beneficial microbes and they're coating the roots, then they're protecting against the pythium. I mean, that was one of the, I've seen it in NFT even, where they
Mhm.
inoculate the roots with certain microbes like Bacillus subtilis, GBO3, and they do it mainly to help protect the plant from root
Mhm.
rots.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So just to keep that in mind, and that kind of takes us into what you were saying. The soil, the addition of microbes used to seem to always do better in soil, and so we've talked about this before. You know, some customers are adding like some types of organic matter to their cocoa. Have you heard of it? Anything like that?
Yeah, this one thing that one of my students, I'm starting a new round of classes tonight, Master Growers short course, and one of my students has kind of been following me for a while, but hasn't taken my classes, and been getting he's a hydro grower, but he uses worm castings as an addition. And then he's also using some organics with the cocoa, a combination of the fish emulsion, which is a good source of nitrogen, slow release for microbes, and some molasses, which is a good source of carbon to feed the microbes. But then he has the worm castings too, and he says he's achieving a Brix of 20% in his
Wow,
vegetables. 20%.
wow,
I'm
that's
thinking
fantastic.
that is, I'm thinking, I mean, he might be watching this, but I think I'm going to learn more from him in this.
Oh,
I'm going to
good.
have some questions for him along the way. Now, one thing I will say, I have tried adding cane molasses to hydroponics, and I always had negative results because microbes need nitrogen, they need carbon. They get the carbon from the exudates of the roots, photosynthetes. We don't add carbon if we don't add carbon to the nutrient, but they still need nitrogen. So if we add carbohydrates, the only nitrogen they're going to have is from the nitrate nitrogen. So it gives a competitive advantage to microorganisms that feed on nitrate nitrogen and break it down to ammonium and then to nitrites and ammonium. So I noticed if I add the sugar and all they have to feed on for nitrogen is nitrates, then the denitrifiers have an advantage, and the nitrites are very toxic to the plant, even in
Right.
small amounts. So every trial that I did where I added a sugar product in hydroponics were performed worse than the control that had no sugars.
No, you're right. I think we did a whole podcast on that concept too.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
probably did.
yeah. Very well
Yeah, that
said.
was
That's right.
that was part of my demise. I did a whole warehouse trial, and every single sugar product performed worse than the control. So they, discontinued the process. Now I think maybe at the very end, yeah, that would be okay. Because if the nitrogen's drawn down at the end, so what? There's plenty of stored nitrogen in the plant that can recycle. So, and also if you add a little sugar toward the end, it's an osmoticum and may prevent the plant from taking up too much water, with that root presser. So there may still be a place. I'm not saying never to use it, but I've noticed in hydroponics, it's negative, has a negative effect
Right,
without the
right.
microbes.
Good point. Good point. And to go along with that, you just touched on that very briefly. There are a lot of growers that really love to use molasses and use it all the time, and that's an instant you really want to be inoculating because you're going to be higher numbers to break down those sugars, so it doesn't take away from the natural biodiversity of that plant that tries to convert that sugar rather than get its sugar from the plants. And so you want to be very careful. Never over apply molasses. And it's kind of the same with fish emulsion or liquid fish fertilizer too. Uh, very, very small amounts again. I've never had big success using that in a hydroponic system. It always created negative benefits for me. However, your student was saying he adds organic matter and worm castings or whatnot into his cocoa, and so I can see a small amount of liquid fish fertilizer benefiting that circumstance as well. Um, a lot of people don't know this. Depending on the fish fertilizer you use, some fish fertilizers, they're very high bricks. I used to check the bricks of the actual solution
Hmm.
of fish. And some of them are very, very high bricks depending on what type of fish was used for the source. And some of them are very, very low. And so uh, that kind of helped me figure out, liquid fish is not liquid fish. It's such a broad term. Compost is not compost. It's such a broad term. Worm castings are not worm castings. It's such a broad term. Really understand and dial in with the products you are using so you know exactly what you're getting and it's going to fit into your system. Just some little things I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too that a lot of times where, what I like to do for consistency is instead of to use something like fish, something that's organic, large molecules, they have to be broken down by
Yes.
enzymes over time before the nitrogen's available. But as digestive enzymes break down proteins, they produce amino acids. And we know what the amino acids do. It feeds the microbes as a nitrogen source, but it also aids with the uptake of calcium. So I'd rather kind of skip a step if I can, especially in hydroponics, and just give them the amino acids, which is the result of enzymatic hydrolysis. It's still natural, it's still biologically active, and it has that. Those smaller molecules are the one that would have the biggest effect on the plant itself, more than the fish emulsion itself. It does the particles.
That's right. And because of this, me personally, if you're not in soil, I recommend not using fish anymore. We have a different product we call liquid gold. It's very similar to fish, but it's a brewing extract. It's actually derived from a brewer's waste and so on and so forth. So it's got a lot of enzymatic activity going on in it. And I would use that instead of fish, with the exception of if you're in soil and you can get a lot of fish into your soil uh, before planting, I highly recommend. Excuse me. Excuse me. I highly recommend using fish outdoor if you can get it into the soil early.
Yeah, that's the big difference in soil outdoors than doing your hydroponics.
Right.
Remember, plants can take up large organic molecules.
Right.
Period. They have to be broken down, and if they're just floating around in the water, you can get blooms. There could be, like you said, you could have negative side effects
Yes.
eventually. Um, and that's the other thing too. If you overdo it with the organics, even you just because it's organic doesn't mean you just pour on as much as you want. If you get a bloom of microorganisms, they can start to compete with the plant for nutrients, and I've seen that too. Where I've seen in my own experiments where where I did some microbial inoculants, like we were
Right.
talking about. I did some inoculants. I got better seed germination, better initial growth, but then the plants, then just the hydroponics caught up and passed the ones that were inoculated in my hydroponic system, and I could see the biofilm. And at that point, I thought, oh, I think what's going on is the microorganisms are eating up the nitrogen,
Yeah.
reducing that, and the plant's not getting as much. So the other one without the microbes, they grew faster because there was no competition. So yeah, the dose, the timing is important, and of course the system that you're growing in. And that's why I like some of the things that you're working on with your new organic products, where you can, or even adding a bioreactor or biofilters to the system, just to break it down. And fish and aquarium, you know, the most the most stable nitrogen source I've seen from aquaculture people, big aquaculture was amino acids. It was the most stable nitrogen source because it helped make a healthy biofilter. They needed the microorganisms to break down the proteins into to the ammonium and then change ammonium into nitrites and then nitrites into nitrates for the plant to take up to clean the water. So there was a place in that cycle, nutrient cycle, where microbes were the key to a healthy system. That's in growing fish. Same thing will work with plants. It's all
That's
part
right.
of the same process of nature, the
That's
nitrogen
right. And we had a
cycle.
comment in one of our prior podcasts, and the comment was they're irrigating their plants with their aquarium water, and the plants love it. The plants are doing great. And I thought, boy, that's fantastic. That's again, use what's available to you. I like that
Hmm.
concept. Kind of goes along with what you're talking about.
Hmm. But when they're using that aquarium water, that's being passed through a biological filter to clean the water through microorganisms. So the microbes are just going to help accelerate the process to keep it healthier for the plants.
All right, there you go. Microbials are important in hydroponics.
Yeah, here's something that's interesting too with that. A lot of times in aquaponics, where you're using the fish water, you can have an iron deficiency. It's pretty common. And even fish can get iron deficiency pretty easily. Something like humic acid, though, will actually help keep the fish cleaner. Literally, it'll help prevent the fungal diseases that fish could get. And also, it's a good source of chelated iron for the plant and stimulates the uptake of iron. So that humic acid just has a small amount going on in that aquaponic system is very beneficial. And I think it's also part of the benefits of the worm castings is that
All
they're
right.
high in humic acids, fulvic acids, humic processes. They will help protect against heavy metals. It'll buffer heavy metal production, and it also aids with stimulating, well, the H plus ATPase for uptake of the iron and the other trace elements. So humic acid is one of the very first um, biologically active products of the decomposition process. Very high in the earthworm castings.
Right, right. And some of our customers that use earthworm castings in their hydro setup with cocoa or what other medium, um, on a microbial or a biological scale, that small organic matter that would be a worm casting, that is a very big home for microbes as well. So it acts as a nice sponge, you know, like a sponge of humate. That's what it is. There we go, a humate sponge. And so you have a high CEC going on there. You have homes for microbes, and it's stable too. It's a stable type of organic matter. It's already been really broken down by the worms, and I think that's a good concept because the number one thing we tell our customers asking about is my soil healthy. Would tell them to smell it and do you have earthworms? So earthworms are the first to leave in tainted soil or contaminated soil or chemicalized soil. They're the first things to leave. They're the last to come back. Earthworms.
Mhm.
I've seen that over and over and over. So if you have earthworm activity, you know you're ahead of the game. And so I really like good worm castings in an environment like that you just spoke about.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I'm with you there. It was really funny one time. It was short story here. I was doing a lot of outdoor hydroponics, and I was using the Dutch buckets. I don't know if you know what those are, but I was using expanded clay pellets
Uh huh.
as my
Yeah.
substrate.
Yep.
And I did a whole big row of tomatoes, other vegetables in an outdoor system. I buried my reservoir so I had good drainage back in, recirculating. And then at the end of the year, I had all those, I pulled all the plants out and there's root particles, and I was trying to clean it off. I was trying to, so the first year I did it, I'm trying to get all the roots out. It was taking me forever, a lot of labor. The next year I got lazy. I said, okay, I'm just going to pour all this with roots and all, remove the plant, but roots and all into a big container. And just, I'll get to it later, right? I just got a little bit lazy in the end of the fall. Well, I didn't get to it. Over the winter, we had some rain, we had snow in it. It started to build up in there, the moisture. The next spring I came up, oh man, that smells a little septic. That's not good. That's stagnant water. So I took a big net that from a screen, porch screens, and I just dumped it out, and it had earthworms in it. I went, what? How could there even be an earthworm in it? It's separate from the soil.
Where did
It's
they
for
come
some reason.
from?
Well, some leaves might have blown in there from some trees, maybe blew up off the ground and came in. There they were. I mean, they ate it up. But here's the funny thing is there was no roots because it composted, all those roots composted over the winter and the spring in the anaerobic. So I poured it out and then rinsed it with the hose, let it dry out in the sun. It was perfectly clean. In fact, it was probably better. There were probably some residues from the microorganisms, the good guys that lived on the roots that were still there. Uh, so I replanted for the next year. So anyway, so that was just, I don't know, it's a short story. I don't know if it means anything, but it's surprised nature does the recycling job itself. If
Yeah,
you
we
give
could
it
do
a
a
little,
whole podcast on that one story.
yeah, yeah, that's funny. Oh, one thing about the earth castings I learned today was that the clumps of the earth castings, that the glue that glues that together is calcium humate. Calcium humate. So it's actually a complex with calcium in it. So now as that starts to break down some more, the microbes are making proteases that are going to make amino acids right there in those clumps as they're breaking down. And that's going to chelate the calcium and make it an available form of calcium for the plant. Nature has all the answers, Brandon.
That
It's
gets no
all the
better.
answers. And healthy soil, that's just part of the process of healthy living soil. And worms have always been part of that
No,
for
yeah,
many, many, I don't even know how long, many generations.
it's no
So
better.
we can learn. The worms have things to teach us if you pay attention.
Yes, they do. They're worth a lot more than just good fishing bait.
That too. Feed the chickens once in a while for a little treat.
There you go. Chickens and birds. Yep. Well, good. Well, a lot of good topics again in this podcast. And boy, once again, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for being a little lenient with me today. We kind of got a little bit later start than we usually do, but it worked out great.
It's fine. Hey, I'm flexible, Brandon. I really enjoy doing these. This is one of my favorite times of the week, is doing these podcasts with you. So don't feel it's an imposition, and we'll try. We work around each other's schedules sometimes. That's okay. So my pleasure.
Okay, good. Yeah, good to see you. And if you in the summertime, if you get a traveling bug in you, we'll bring you up to our brewing facility and see if we can get some pointers from you.
I've been wanting to see it, and I got to see your little tour, your little virtual tour. But I'd love
Yeah,
to get up there and sit down with you guys and talk to the old timer and get some
yeah.
insights about some of the roots, no pun intended, some of the roots to some of the organic movements and how they can be applied in an intelligent way.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. We got to do it. We have to take advantage of that this year. We got to make that happen.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
Okay.
I
Well,
guess
good luck tonight at the class, and I hope everything goes well. I hope we reach some of our customers sending the emails out about it, and so uh, I'm happy people are taking their time to learn from the master. So yeah, give it to them. Go get them.
Okay, good. I'll give you a report next week on how the first class went. I love this.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, I love this first class. I call it the first one is called growing strategies. And what I really do, I do a lot of polling of the audience. You know, you commercial grower, you a hobbyist, soil, hydroponics, what's your medium, do you use CO2, lots of different things on this one. So I'm getting all kinds of feedback, and then I can really gauge the audience better so that I can tailor the classes to better meet their needs. So this is going to be a really good class tonight for the live one, and I'll let you know how it turns out.
Okay, fantastic. Can't wait to hear. So once again, thank you very much for taking the time. It's an honor to be able to do this with the master. And dang, this is fun. Can't wait till next week. Or yeah, we'll probably do it next week as well.
Okay, have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you too. Thanks, Harley.
Goodbye.
See you.